Captain Sarah Chen floated through the dark corridors of the dead ship. Her helmet light cut through the darkness as she moved carefully from room to room. The alien vessel had been drifting in space for over 300 years, cold and silent like a metal tomb. "Anything useful in there, Captain?" came the voice of her engineer through the radio. "Still looking," Sarah replied, pushing open another door. "This ship is huge. Whoever built it knew how to work with metal." The ship belonged to a race called the Zephyrians. Sarah had heard stories about them from the older species in the galaxy. They had been warriors, proud and strong, but they were all dead now. The Vrex Dominion had killed them all decades ago, burning their worlds and destroying their cities. Sarah's team was looking for salvage. The Prometheus was an exploration ship from Earth, part of humanity's small but growing presence in the galaxy. Humans were new to space compared to the other races. Most aliens saw them as young and harmless, good at fixing things and making deals, but not much else. As Sarah moved deeper into the ship, she found what looked like a captain's room. Ancient computer screens covered the walls, all dark and dead, but in the center of the room sat a metal box untouched by time. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with their own light. Sarah called for her team's language expert. "Dr. Martinez, I need you to see this." 20 minutes later, Dr. Carmen Martinez floated into the room, her scanning equipment beeping softly. She studied the glowing symbols with growing excitement. "Captain, this is incredible," she said. "These are memory crystals, Zephyrian data storage. If I can activate them." She connected her portable computer to the box. The symbols flashed brighter, and suddenly the room filled with ghostly blue light. A figure appeared in the air, tall with 4 arms and skin like silver metal. A Zephyrian. The hologram spoke in a deep voice. Dr. Martinez's computer translated the words into English. "I am Commander Thekvar of the exploration ship Windcutter. If you are seeing this message, then my people are likely gone and strangers have found our vessel. I record this so our final debt will not be forgotten." Sarah and her team watched as the hologram continued. 800 Earth years ago, my ship was damaged in your solar system. We crashed on your world, on the 3rd planet. We thought we would die there, far from home, on a world full of primitives who had never seen the stars. The image changed, showing a green forest and a small village made of simple houses. Humans in old clothes moved between the buildings, tending to crops and animals. But these humans surprised us. The hologram continued. Despite their simple ways, they showed us kindness we had never known. An old healer named Miguel Santos found us in the wreckage. We were hurt and sick. Our ship was broken beyond repair. The scene showed the old human man helping tall silver figures, giving them food and medicine. Other villagers joined in, bringing blankets and water, even though they clearly had very little for themselves. For 3 months, these humans cared for us. They shared their food when they barely had enough to eat. They gave us medicine made from plants. They asked for nothing in return. Miguel Santos even gave us his own house to sleep in while we recovered. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. She had studied alien cultures, and she knew what was coming next. When another Zephyrian ship finally found us, we wanted to repay this kindness, but the humans asked for nothing. Miguel Santos said that helping strangers was simply what good people did. We were amazed by this wisdom from a people who had never left their own world. The hologram reached into its clothing and pulled out a crystal pendant, beautiful and complex with light dancing inside it. So we gave Miguel Santos this debt marker. In our culture, such a marker can never be destroyed or forgotten. It binds our entire race to repay the kindness shown to us. We told Miguel that someday when his people reached the stars, this marker would call in that debt. Dr. Martinez gasped. "Captain, do you understand what this means?" Sarah nodded slowly. She had studied galactic law. A Zephyrian debt marker was more than just a promise. It was a legal contract that passed from generation to generation. Since the Zephyrians were all dead, whoever held the marker would inherit everything they had owned. The hologram continued its story. We left Earth promising to return someday and properly thank Miguel Santos and his people. But the Vrex found our homeworld first. They came with 1,000 ships, burning our cities and killing our children. We fought bravely, but there were too many of them. The scene changed to show great battles in space. Silver ships fighting against dark vessels with red markings. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful and fast, but they were outnumbered 10 to 1. Before our final world fell, we scattered our treasures across the galaxy. Our ships, our weapons, our knowledge, all hidden and waiting. We hoped that someday someone worthy would find them and use them to stop the Vrex from hurting others. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. She was starting to understand the true meaning of what they had found. The debt marker will lead the worthy to our hidden vaults. Our technology, our ships, our weapons, all of it belongs to those who hold the marker. But remember, these gifts come with a price. Whoever claims our legacy must use it wisely. Strength without honor is the way of the Vrex. Do not become like them. The hologram began to fade. Find the marker. Miguel Santos's family kept it safe for generations. His descendant still carries it, waiting for the day when humans would reach the stars. Find them and claim what was left for you. But remember, we give these gifts not for conquest, but for justice. The image disappeared, leaving Sarah and her team in darkness. Dr. Martinez, Sarah said quietly, start researching the Santos family. Find out if any descendants of Miguel Santos are still alive. Already on it, Captain, Martinez replied, her fingers flying over her computer. According to Earth records, Miguel Santos had 3 children. His family line survived. There's a Dr. Isabella Santos living in São Paulo right now. She's a xenobiologist working with the Earth government. Sarah stared at the empty space where the hologram had been. Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Priority 1. Captain, are you sure about this? Asked her engineer. If this is real, if the debt marker actually exists, this could change everything. Humanity would inherit an entire alien civilization's technology. Sarah thought about the stories she had heard about the Vrex Dominion. They ruled through fear, enslaving entire worlds and crushing anyone who opposed them. They had destroyed dozens of peaceful races over the centuries. The galaxy lived in terror of their black ships and cruel soldiers. The Zephyrians were good people, she said finally. They died fighting evil. If they left us their weapons, maybe it's time someone used them properly. She activated her ship's communication system. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Prometheus calling Earth Command. I have urgent news that will require immediate action from the highest levels of government. As her message traveled across space toward Earth, Sarah wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. Soon the galaxy would learn what happened when humans kept their promises, and the Vrex Dominion would discover that some debts could only be paid in justice. The Galactic Confederation Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from 50 different species filled the curved rows of seats, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center of the great hall stood Dr. Isabella Santos, holding a small crystal pendant that seemed to glow with its own inner light. This is ridiculous, growled Ambassador Kresh, the reptilian representative from the Saurid Collective. Humans have been in space for barely 2 centuries. How can they possibly claim ownership of Zephyrian territories? Isabella remained calm, though her heart was racing. Next to her stood Ambassador Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief diplomatic representative to the Confederation. Elena had been a lawyer before becoming a diplomat, and she understood galactic law better than most aliens. The debt marker is authentic, Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. Our experts have verified it using 3 different methods. Under Confederation Law, Section 12, Subsection 4, inheritance rights are clearly defined. When a species becomes extinct, their legal obligations transfer to whoever holds valid claim documents. A new voice boomed across the chamber, cold and full of menace. The Vrex Dominion does not recognize this claim. Every head turned toward the entrance. Supreme Overlord Kalthos strode into the chamber, his massive form covered in black armor decorated with the skulls of conquered enemies. Behind him marched 12 Vrex warriors, their red eyes glowing with barely controlled violence. The Confederation president, a wise old being called Speaker Mollix, raised one of his 6 arms for silence. Overlord Kalthos, the Vrex Dominion was not invited to these proceedings. Kalthos laughed, a sound like grinding metal. We go where we please, old fool, and we will not allow these weak mammals to claim technology that belongs to the strong. Isabella stepped forward, surprising everyone by showing no fear of the terrifying Vrex leader. The technology doesn't belong to the strong, Overlord. It belongs to those who earned it through kindness. Kindness? Kalthos snarled. Kindness is weakness. The Zephyrians learned that lesson when we burned their worlds. You humans will learn it too. But Isabella had spent months studying the debt marker since Captain Chen's discovery. She understood things about Zephyrian culture that even the Confederation's experts had missed. You're wrong about the Zephyrians, she said. They weren't weak. They were the greatest warriors the galaxy had ever seen. But they were also wise enough to know that true strength comes from protecting others, not crushing them. She held up the pendant. This marker doesn't just give us their ships and weapons. It gives us their knowledge, their history, their entire cultural database. And that database contains something very interesting about the Vrex. Kalthos stepped closer, his hand moving to his weapon. Careful, little human. Your words walk close to the edge of death. Isabella smiled. The Zephyrians spent their last years developing something they called the Wrath Protocols. Battle plans designed specifically to destroy the Vrex Dominion completely. They never got to use them because they died first. But now those plans belong to us. The chamber fell silent. Even Kalthos seemed surprised by this news. Speaker Mollix consulted his records. Dr. Santos, are you saying that the Zephyrians left behind military intelligence about the Vrex? Not just intelligence, Isabella replied. Complete tactical analyses. Weapon specifications designed to counter Vrex technology. Even detailed maps of hidden Vrex bases that they thought were secret. The Zephyrians were very thorough in preparing their revenge. Ambassador Elena stepped forward with a data tablet. We've also located the first cache of Zephyrian military assets. 3 days ago, human archaeological teams activated a hidden shipyard in the Kepler system. 67 warships came online, along with manufacturing facilities capable of building 100 more. Murmurs of amazement and fear rippled through the chamber. 67 Zephyrian warships were enough to conquer a dozen star systems. Kalthos was no longer laughing. You think ancient ships can threaten the Dominion? We have destroyed entire civilizations. We command 10,000 vessels. Quality over quantity, Isabella said quietly. One Zephyrian dreadnought was worth 50 regular warships. And now we're upgrading their designs with human technology, our artificial intelligence systems, our adaptive shields, our quantum computers. The Zephyrians were great warriors, but they never had the kind of innovation humans bring to problems. She activated a hologram projector, showing the chamber images of human engineers working inside massive alien ships. The vessels were beautiful and deadly, their silver hulls gleaming with new additions. We're not just restoring their fleet, she continued. We're improving it. Human creativity combined with Zephyrian military science. The galaxy has never seen anything like what we're building. Several alien representatives looked terrified. The Confederation had always seen humans as useful but harmless. The idea of humanity suddenly becoming the galaxy's most powerful military force scared them almost as much as the Vrex did. This is exactly what we feared, said Ambassador Kresh. Humans are changing too quickly. Yesterday you were explorers and traders. Today you claim ancient weapons. Tomorrow you might decide to conquer us all. Elena shook her head. The Confederation has nothing to fear from humanity. We're not interested in conquest. But we won't ignore the suffering the Vrex have caused across the galaxy. She gestured to the viewing screens around the chamber, which showed images of worlds destroyed by Vrex attacks. Burned cities, empty planets, the graves of entire civilizations. For centuries, the galaxy has lived in fear because no one was strong enough to stop them. The Zephyrians tried and died. But they left us the tools to finish what they started. We intend to use those tools. Kalthos drew his weapon, a massive energy blade that hummed with deadly power. You think you can threaten the Dominion with ancient toys? We conquered this galaxy through strength and fear. That is the only law that matters, but Isabella didn't back down. The Zephyrians understood something you never will, Kalthos. Fear can make people obey you, but it can't make them loyal. Every world you've conquered hates you. Every species you've enslaved dreams of freedom. When we come for you, we won't be coming alone. She looked around the chamber at all the alien representatives. Some of you are afraid of what humanity might become. That's understandable. But ask yourselves this. Are you more afraid of humans who use power to protect others or Vrex who use power to destroy them? The chamber erupted in debate. Some species called for restrictions on human military development. Others quietly expressed support for any force that might finally challenge Vrex dominance. A few tried to stay neutral, fearing retaliation from either side. Speaker Mollix called for order. The Council will need time to consider these revelations. Dr. Santos, humanity's claim to the Zephyrian inheritance appears to be legally valid. But the implications are significant, Isabella nodded. We understand the concerns, Speaker Mollix. That's why we're being open about our plans. We're not hiding our military buildup like the Vrex do. We're telling you exactly what we're doing and why. She looked directly at Kalthos. The debt will be paid, Overlord. 800 years ago, A small human village showed kindness to strangers. Today, humanity has the power to repay that kindness by bringing justice to the galaxy. We won't waste this gift. Kalthos sheathed his weapon, but his eyes burned with hatred. This is not over, humans. The Dominion has crushed greater threats than you. We will add your worlds to our collection. You're welcome to try, Elena said calmly. But remember, we know about your hidden bases now. We know your ship designs, your battle tactics, your military codes. The Zephyrians spent years learning everything about you, and now all that knowledge belongs to us. As the Vrex delegation stormed out of the chamber, Isabella felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Her ancestor Miguel had helped dying strangers in a forest 8 centuries ago. Now his simple act of kindness was about to reshape the entire galaxy. The debt was awakening, and soon the universe would see what happened when humans kept their promises. Admiral Marcus Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the stars through the massive viewing window. The ship was a marvel of engineering, part human innovation, part ancient Zephyrian design. Around him, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the dozens of other vessels in the fleet. 3 months had passed since the Confederation Council meeting. In that time, humanity had awakened 7 more Zephyrian facilities across the galaxy. Shipyards, weapons factories, research stations, all hidden for centuries, waiting for the right code to bring them back to life. The combined human Zephyrian fleet now numbered over 300 vessels, each one more powerful than anything the galaxy had seen before. Admiral, called Lieutenant Sarah Park from the communication station, we're receiving reports from Scout Group 7. They've completed their observation run in the Vega sector. Marcus nodded. What did they find? 3 Vrex patrol bases, just like the Zephyrian database predicted. Captain Rodriguez says the Vrex are following the same defensive patterns they used 200 years ago. They haven't adapted their tactics at all. Marcus smiled grimly. That was typical of the Vrex. They had ruled through superior numbers and brutality for so long that they had forgotten how to innovate. They believed their way of war was the only way, which made them predictable. Have Rodriguez deploy a beacon in the outer asteroid belt, then move to the next target system, Marcus ordered. Tell him to make sure the Vrex see his ship, but don't let them get close enough to scan it properly. Yes, sir. Marcus turned back to the star display. Across the galaxy, 40 human scout ships were doing the same thing, appearing near Vrex installations, observing carefully, then disappearing before the enemy could respond. To the Vrex, it looked like random harassment. They had no idea they were being studied like insects under a microscope. The door to the bridge opened and Dr. Isabella Santos walked in. Over the past months, she had become humanity's expert on Zephyrian culture and technology. She spent her days unlocking the secrets hidden in their ancient databases, learning not just how to use their weapons, but why they had built them. Admiral Thompson, she said, I have the analysis you requested on Vrex command structures. Marcus turned from the viewing window. What did you find? Isabella activated a holographic display showing the structure of Vrex military organization. The Zephyrians were very thorough in studying their enemies. Every Vrex fleet follows the same basic pattern. 1 command ship surrounded by smaller vessels arranged in defensive formations. They never change this structure because their entire culture is based on rigid hierarchy. She pointed to the command ship in the display. Kill the leader and the entire fleet falls apart. The Vrex don't train their subordinates to think independently. Without orders from above, they become confused and ineffective. Interesting, Marcus said. And their planetary defenses? Even more predictable. They build the same type of fortresses on every world they conquer. The Zephyrians mapped out 17 different ways to destroy them. We've updated those plans with modern human weapons technology. Marcus studied the tactical data. The more he learned about Vrex military doctrine, the more he understood why the Zephyrians had been confident they could win their war. It wasn't about having better weapons, though they certainly did. It was about having better strategies. Admiral, Lieutenant Park called out again. Priority message from Earth Command. Put it through. The image of General Catherine Hayes appeared on the main screen. She looked tired but determined. Marcus, how are the preparations going? All systems are operational, General. The fleet is ready for Phase 2 whenever you give the order. Good. Because we're getting pressure from some Confederation species to slow down our military buildup. They're starting to get nervous about human power. Marcus nodded. He had expected this. What's our response? Ambassador Vasquez is handling the political side. But I want you to know that we have unofficial support from more species than we expected. It seems a lot of civilizations have been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge the Vrex. Isabella stepped forward. General, I've been analyzing communications intercepts from Vrex territory. Their military commanders are getting frustrated with our scouting operations. They want to launch a preemptive strike against human colonies. Let them try, General Hayes said. Our defensive systems are online. Besides, we want them angry and off balance. Angry enemies make mistakes. The general's expression grew serious. Marcus, how confident are you in the Zephyrian battle plans? Marcus had been studying those plans for months. They were incredibly detailed, covering every aspect of warfare from fleet movements to individual combat techniques. More importantly, they had been designed by a species that understood both honor and necessity. The plans are solid, General, but they're more than just military tactics. The Zephyrians built a complete philosophy of warfare, based on justice and protection. They weren't trying to conquer, they were trying to liberate. That's exactly what we need, General Hayes replied. The galaxy has to see that we're different from the Vrex. We're not trying to build an empire. We're trying to free one. After the call ended, Marcus walked with Isabella through the ship's corridors. The retribution was massive, nearly 2 kilometers long, but it felt alive with human activity. Engineers worked alongside Zephyrian automated systems. Scientists studied ancient alien technology while adapting it for human use. Soldiers trained with weapons that their ancestors could never have imagined. Isabella, can I ask you something personal? Marcus said as they reached the observation deck. Of course. How does it feel knowing that your ancestors' kindness led to all this? Isabella was quiet for a long moment, looking out at the fleet of warships floating in space around them. Miguel Santos was a simple man. He was a healer in a small village. He probably never imagined that his great-great-granddaughter would be planning the destruction of an alien empire. She touched the pendant she wore around her neck, the same debt marker that Miguel had received 8 centuries ago. But I think he would understand. He helped strangers because it was right. We're fighting the Vrex for the same reason. Because it's right, Marcus nodded. The Zephyrians chose their inheritors well. Admiral, came Lieutenant Park's voice over the ship's communication system. Priority alert from Scout Group 12. They're reporting unusual Vrex fleet movements in the Centauri sector. Marcus and Isabella hurried back to the bridge. The main display showed a tactical map of human space with red markers indicating Vrex ship positions. What am I looking at, Lieutenant? Marcus asked. Sir, it appears the Vrex are massing a fleet near our colony worlds. Intelligence estimates at least 500 ships, including 3 of their super dreadnoughts. Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The Vrex had taken the bait. They were preparing to strike at human colonies, probably hoping to force humanity to negotiate from a position of weakness. How long before they're in position to attack? He asked. 48 hours, sir. Isabella moved to her station and began accessing Zephyrian databases. Marcus, this might be exactly what we need. The Zephyrians predicted that the Vrex would eventually try a massive assault to demonstrate their power. And they developed specific countermeasures for exactly this scenario. Operation Thunder Harvest, a coordinated strike designed to destroy an entire Vrex assault fleet, while simultaneously hitting their support bases. Marcus studied the tactical data flowing across his screens. The Zephyrian plan was elegant and deadly. Instead of meeting the Vrex fleet head-on, human forces would use their superior speed and coordination to attack from multiple directions at once. Lieutenant Park, send a coded message to all fleet commanders. Begin Phase 3, preparations immediately, and get me a direct line to Earth Command. Yes, sir. As his crew rushed to carry out orders, Marcus felt the weight of history settling on his shoulders. In 2 days, humanity would fight its first major space battle. They would either prove themselves worthy of the Zephyrian legacy, or they would join them in extinction. But Marcus had studied the ancient war plans. He had trained with the best officers humanity could produce. He had ships that could outfight anything the Vrex could build. Most importantly, he had something the Vrex had never understood. He was fighting not for conquest, but for justice. The quiet time was ending. Soon thunder would roll across the galaxy, and the Vrex would learn what happened when humans kept their promises. The message began broadcasting across every Vrex communication channel at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time. It was spoken in perfect ancient Zephyrian, a language that had been dead for centuries. But every Vrex commander understood its meaning. The debt is called, the fallen will have justice. Supreme Overlord Kalthos stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dark Conquest, staring at the transmission with growing rage. Around him, his commanders waited nervously for orders. The Vrex war fleet stretched across space, 537 vessels, including the 3 most powerful ships in the Dominion. They mock us with dead words, Kalthos snarled. The humans think ancient ghosts will save them. But even as he spoke, strange things began happening across Vrex space. The small beacons that human scouts had been placing for months suddenly activated all at once. Instead of the simple monitoring devices the Vrex had assumed them to be, they revealed themselves as sophisticated communication relays. In an instant, a galaxy-spanning network came online. Every human ship, no matter how far apart, could now communicate with perfect clarity. At the same time, the network began jamming Vrex communications, turning their coordinated fleet into isolated groups of confused ships. Admiral Marcus Thompson watched from the bridge of the Retribution as the battle plan unfolded exactly as the Zephyrians had designed it. The first phase was always information warfare. Blind your enemy while giving yourself perfect vision. All scout ships, report status, he commanded. Voices began coming in from across the galaxy. Captain Rodriguez in the Vega sector, Commander Kim near the Virex homeworld, Lieutenant Colonel Foster at the edge of Dominion space. Dozens of human commanders reporting their positions and readiness. Phase 1. Complete. Admiral, reported his tactical officer. The communication network is fully operational. Vrex fleet coordination has been reduced by 87%. Begin Phase 2, Marcus ordered. What happened next would be remembered as the most coordinated military operation in galactic history. Across hundreds of star systems, human ships began moving at the same moment. But they weren't all heading toward the main Vrex fleet threatening human colonies. Instead, they were implementing the Zephyrian strategy called the Severing. While Kalthos had gathered his ships to intimidate humanity, he had left his supply bases and manufacturing centers weakly defended. The Zephyrians had understood that destroying an enemy's ability to fight was more important than destroying their current forces. Human strike teams hit Vrex shipyards, supply depots, and communication centers simultaneously. Ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields for months revealed themselves, catching the defenders completely by surprise. Bases that had been considered impregnable fell within hours to weapons their designers had never imagined. Captain Sarah Chen, the explorer who had started it all by finding the Zephyrian records, now commanded a strike force attacking a Vrex fortress in the Rigel system. Her ships moved like dancers, too fast for the heavy Vrex weapons to track, too powerful for their shields to stop. Target the power generators, she ordered, just like the Zephyrian tactical manual described. The ancient fortress, built to withstand conventional attacks, crumbled under weapons designed specifically to exploit its weaknesses. Within 20 minutes, what had taken the Vrex decades to build was nothing but floating debris. Similar scenes played out across Dominion space. The Vrex had built their empire using the same designs and tactics for centuries. The Zephyrians had spent their final years learning every weakness in those designs. Now humanity was using that knowledge to devastating effect. But the main battle was still to come. Kalthos had finally managed to restore limited communication with his fleet, and he was leading them toward the human colonies in the Centauri system. He still commanded over 500 ships, enough to destroy every human settlement in that sector. Admiral Thompson was waiting for him. The Retribution and 36 other human vessels hung in space near the human colony of New Geneva. To Vrex sensors, it looked like a desperate last stand. Humanity's entire fleet gathered to protect their civilians. It was exactly what the Zephyrians had wanted the Vrex to think. Admiral, Vrex fleet entering sensor range, reported Lieutenant Park. 537 vessels confirmed. They're maintaining standard attack formation. Marcus smiled. After months of studying Vrex tactics, their predictability was almost disappointing. All ships, prepare for Operation Thunder Harvest. Weapons free on my command. The Vrex fleet approached in their traditional formation. Heavy battleships in the center, smaller vessels arranged around them in defensive circles. It was a formation designed to maximize firepower while protecting command vessels. Against most enemies, it was nearly unstoppable. But the Zephyrians had never been most enemies. Sir, Vrex fleet is powering weapons, Lieutenant Park reported. They'll be in firing range in 60 seconds. Execute Thunder Harvest, Marcus commanded. What happened next seemed impossible to anyone who didn't understand Zephyrian military science. The 37 human ships didn't advance to meet the massive Vrex fleet. Instead, they seemed to multiply. Holographic projectors, a technology the Zephyrians had perfected centuries ago, created the illusion of hundreds of additional ships. At the same time, the real human vessels used advanced stealth systems to become nearly invisible. The Vrex found themselves firing at phantoms while the real threat moved around them like ghosts. But the true genius of Thunder Harvest wasn't in the deception. It was in what happened next. While the Vrex fleet was distracted by fake targets, nearly 200 additional human ships dropped out of hyperspace behind them. These weren't the same vessels the Vrex had been tracking. They were fresh units that had been hidden in nearby systems, waiting for exactly this moment. The Vrex suddenly found themselves surrounded and outnumbered, their formation useless against attacks coming from all directions. Worse, the human ships were using weapons and tactics the Vrex had never seen before. Zephyrian plasma cannons that could punch through any shield, gravity mines that could crush a battleship. Most devastating of all, hunter-killer drones that sought out command vessels with deadly precision. Kalthos watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet was torn apart piece by piece. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds died in seconds. Commanders who had never known defeat screamed for help that would never come. All ships focus fire on the human command vessel, he roared into his communication system. Destroy their leader and they will scatter like cowards. But when his remaining ships targeted the Retribution, they found something unexpected. The human admiral wasn't hiding behind walls of smaller vessels like a Vrex commander would. Instead, his ship charged straight toward the heaviest concentration of enemy fire. Marcus Thompson had studied more than Zephyrian tactics. He had also learned their philosophy of leadership. A commander who asked his people to take risks had to be willing to take the greatest risk of all. The Retribution blazed through space like a silver comet, its weapons tearing through Vrex ships with surgical precision. Behind it came the rest of the human fleet, inspired by their admiral's courage and guided by tactical systems that could predict enemy movements before they were made. In less than 4 hours, it was over. The mighty Vrex fleet that had been intended to crush human resistance was destroyed. Only a handful of enemy ships escaped, fleeing back toward Dominion space with news of the impossible defeat. But Kalthos himself did not run. The Supreme Overlord, ruler of the most feared empire in the galaxy, demanded single combat with the human admiral. It was an ancient Vrex tradition when all else failed. Let the strongest warrior decide the outcome. Marcus accepted the challenge. The two leaders met aboard Kalthos's damaged flagship in a cargo bay cleared for combat. The Vrex Overlord was massive, nearly 3 meters tall, covered in scars from 100 battles. His weapon was a plasma sword that could cut through starship armor. Marcus carried only a simple metal blade, but it was forged according to Zephyrian techniques and enhanced with human technology. More importantly, it was guided by knowledge downloaded directly from the ancient warrior database. You are brave for a mammal, Kalthos admitted as they circled each other. But bravery will not save you. I have killed champions from 50 worlds. The Zephyrians were better warriors than any of them, Marcus replied calmly. And they left me their techniques. The battle that followed was brief but intense. Kalthos fought with the brutal efficiency that had made him ruler of the Dominion. But Marcus moved with precision that seemed almost supernatural, every motion perfectly calculated to exploit his enemy's weaknesses. When it ended, the Supreme Overlord lay dying on the floor of his own ship. With his last breath, he whispered something that would haunt his surviving followers forever. The humans fight like Zephyrians. As news of the victory spread across the galaxy, species that had lived in fear for centuries began to hope. The mighty Vrex Dominion had been broken by a race that most aliens had considered harmless. The debt that began with kindness in a Brazilian village had been paid with justice among the stars. But Marcus Thompson knew the real battle was just beginning. Destroying the Vrex fleet was only the first step. Now humanity had to prove they could build something better than what they had torn down. 6 months after the Battle of Centauri, the galaxy watched in amazement as humanity did something unprecedented. Instead of claiming conquered Vrex worlds as their own territory, they began giving them back to their original inhabitants. Dr. Isabella Santos stood in the rebuilt capital city of Thyler Prime, watching as the native Thylaxi people celebrated their freedom. The insect-like beings danced in the streets, their colorful wings creating beautiful patterns in the sunlight. After 3 centuries of Rex occupation, they were finally free to practice their own culture again. Dr. Santos, said the Thylaxi queen through her translation device, "Our people owe humanity a debt we can never repay. You have given us back our world." Isabella smiled and shook her head. "Your Majesty, we didn't give you anything. This world was always yours. We simply removed those who had stolen it from you." The queen's compound eyes glittered with gratitude. "Even so, Thyler Prime will always stand with humanity. We have seen what you could have done, what any other conqueror would have done. You could have made us your subjects. Instead, you made us your friends." Similar scenes were playing out across former Vrex territory. World after world was being liberated and returned to its rightful owners. The Karani got back their ocean worlds. The Deltans reclaimed their mountain cities. Dozens of species that had been enslaved for generations suddenly found themselves free. But not every liberation was simple. Some worlds had been under Vrex control for so long that their original inhabitants had forgotten how to govern themselves. Others had been so damaged by centuries of abuse that they needed extensive help to rebuild. This was where humanity's true genius showed itself. Instead of abandoning difficult cases, they created something called the Zephyrian Memorial Territories, a network of worlds protected by human military might, but governed by their own people. Human advisors helped with reconstruction. Human ships protected against pirates and warlords, but the actual decisions were made by local populations. Admiral Marcus Thompson, now promoted to Fleet Admiral and commander of all human forces, explained the policy to a gathering of Confederation representatives on the neutral world of Haven Station. "We didn't inherit the Zephyrian legacy to build an empire," he said. "Standing before delegates from across the galaxy, we inherited it to finish what the Zephyrians started, creating a galaxy where species can live in peace without fear of conquest." Ambassador Kresh of the Saurid Collective raised one of his clawed hands. "Fleet Admiral, your words are noble, but many species are concerned about human military power. You now command the strongest fleet in galactic history. How can we be sure you won't someday decide to use it for conquest?" It was a fair question, and Marcus had expected it. The human fleet now included over 800 ships, each one enhanced with both Zephyrian technology and human innovations. It was enough firepower to conquer half the galaxy if humanity chose to use it that way. But Isabella Santos rose from her seat in the observer section. As the keeper of Zephyrian cultural knowledge, she had become humanity's unofficial ambassador to the galaxy's concerns about their rapid rise to power. "May I address the Admiral's question, Ambassador Kresh?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "The floor is yours, Dr. Santos." Isabella activated a holographic display showing the crystal pendant that had started everything. But now the display revealed details that hadn't been visible before. Patterns of light deep within the crystal that seemed to shift and dance. "When I first studied the debt marker, I thought it was simply a legal document," she said. "But the Zephyrians were much more sophisticated than that. The marker contains their entire cultural database, including their philosophical and ethical frameworks." She touched a control, and the display changed to show Zephyrian text with translations scrolling beside it. The marker wasn't just a promise to repay kindness with technology. It was a test. Only a species that understood the true meaning of the debt could unlock the marker's full potential. And that meaning isn't about military power, it's about moral responsibility. The hologram showed scenes from Zephyrian history, their rise as warriors, their evolution into protectors, and finally their sacrifice in fighting the Vrex. The Zephyrians learned something that the Vrex never understood. True strength doesn't come from the ability to destroy your enemies. It comes from the wisdom to know when to fight and when to protect. They encoded this philosophy into every piece of technology they left behind. She gestured to Admiral Thompson. "That's why human commanders can use Zephyrian weapons so effectively. It's not just about superior firepower. It's about understanding that these tools were created for protection, not conquest. Try to use them for evil purposes and they literally won't function properly." A murmur of surprise went through the chamber. Several species had tried to reverse engineer captured human ships after the war, but had never been able to make the weapon systems work correctly. Ambassador Elena Vasquez stood up from the human diplomatic section. Dr. Santos is correct. We've discovered that Zephyrian technology includes built-in ethical subroutines. The more destructive a weapon is, the more it requires the user to demonstrate moral justification for its use. She displayed technical schematics showing the complex decision-making systems embedded in every Zephyrian device. Their most powerful weapons simply refuse to fire unless the targeting computer confirms that the user is defending innocence or fighting against genuine threats. It's impossible to use them for unprovoked aggression or conquest. The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. The galaxy had been afraid of human military power, not knowing that the power itself was designed to prevent abuse. Speaker Mollix, the Confederation president, leaned forward with interest. Are you saying that the Zephyrians built moral constraints into their technology? More than that, Isabella replied. They built a complete ethical framework. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of equipment we've inherited comes with the accumulated wisdom of a civilization that spent thousands of years learning how to use power responsibly. She paused, looking around the chamber at all the alien faces watching her. Miguel Santos showed kindness to dying strangers because he believed it was the right thing to do. The Zephyrians recognized that same moral instinct in humanity and entrusted us with their legacy because they knew we would use it the same way. Not for personal gain, but because it's right. Admiral Thompson stepped forward again. The Confederation has asked how you can be sure humanity won't abuse our power. The answer is simple. We can't abuse it. The technology won't let us. But even if it could, we wouldn't want to. We've seen what conquest and oppression do to the galaxy. We've seen the suffering the Vrex caused. We refuse to become like them. He activated his own display, showing a map of the galaxy with different colors marking various territories. Look at what we've actually done since the war ended. We've liberated 43 worlds and returned them to their original inhabitants. We've destroyed 6 pirate fleets that were preying on trade routes. We've provided disaster relief to 11 colonies hit by natural catastrophes. We've established trade agreements that benefit everyone involved. The map showed the results. Former Vrex territory was now a patchwork of free worlds, all protected by human ships but governed by their own people. Trade was flourishing. Art and culture were returning to worlds that had been suppressed for centuries. The galaxy was healing. This is what the Zephyrian legacy was meant for, Admiral Thompson continued. Not to create a new empire, but to create something better. A galaxy where every species can live according to their own values, protected from those who would harm them. Ambassador Kresh studied the displayed data carefully. Fleet Admiral, what you describe sounds admirable. But what happens if humanity changes? What if future generations decide to use this power differently? Isabella smiled and held up the debt marker one final time. The marker isn't just our inheritance, Ambassador. It's also our binding contract. As long as humanity holds this device, we are bound by Zephyrian law to use their technology only for protection and justice. Break that trust and the marker will deactivate everything we've inherited. She looked around the chamber with quiet confidence. But I'm not worried about that happening. Do you know why? Please enlighten us, said Speaker Mollix. Because the debt marker is teaching us. Every day, every decision, every choice we make is guided by the wisdom of a civilization that learned how to be truly strong. And that wisdom is becoming part of human culture. Our children are growing up understanding that real power comes from helping others, not hurting them. The chamber was silent for a long moment as the implications sank in. Finally, Speaker Mollix stood up. The Confederation Council will need time to formally discuss these revelations, but I believe I speak for many when I say that humanity's actions since the war have been reassuring. As the session ended and delegates began filing out, Isabella walked to the station's observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of different species docked at the station. Human vessels worked alongside alien ones, their crews cooperating on trade missions and exploration projects. Admiral Thompson joined her at the viewing wall. Do you think they believe us? He asked. Some do, Isabella replied. Others will need more time to see that we mean what we say. But that's okay. The Zephyrians waited 8 centuries for the right species to inherit their legacy. We can be patient while the galaxy learns to trust us. She touched the pendant around her neck, feeling its gentle warmth. Miguel Santos couldn't have imagined that his kindness would lead to all this. But I think he would be proud. A small act of mercy in a Brazilian village became justice among the stars. Marcus nodded, watching as a group of human and alien children played together in the station's recreational area. They came from a dozen different worlds, but they laughed and played as friends. The debt has been paid, he said quietly, but the work isn't finished. Now we have to prove we're worthy guardians of the peace we've created. Isabella smiled. Then we'd better get back to work. The galaxy is counting on us. As they walked back toward their shuttle, neither of them noticed the small monument that had been erected near the station's central plaza. It was a simple stone marker, engraved with words in both English and ancient Zephyrian. To Miguel Santos of Earth, and all who show kindness to strangers. Your compassion echoes across the stars, and the galaxy is brighter for your example. The debt had been paid. The galaxy was safe, and somewhere in the quantum patterns of an ancient crystal pendant, the grateful spirits of the Zephyrians finally rested in peace.